It is so easy to come up on this stage and talk about all the amazing successes, things that you did that just worked, and I want to share it, and let me tell you all about it. It's a lot harder, and I dare say braver, to come up and talk about things that didn't quite work. And yet became a stepping stone to something that did. I mean, there's, call it failure, call it whatever, but and there's great quotes on failure you can find all over the place. Range from Gandhi to that great American philosopher Ellen DeGeneres, and one of my favorites is Winston Churchill's, which is, I think everyone knows that failure is success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. And then the one I also like, having spent time in Silicon Valley, that venture capitalists often say is that if your business ends up looking like your business plan, you probably did something wrong. Because you weren't open to new information or adapting. So we're going to talk with three brave companies about things that they've done on the journey to circularity that they didn't always go as expected, but became stepping stones to that. So you can see on the screen, we have Marissa McGowan from L'Oreal, Jeff Hogue from Levi Strauss, and Jane Abernethy from Human Scale. Human Scale, I wasn't as familiar with, an office furniture company. And so we're going to talk about each of their adventures and winding, bumpy roads along these lines. And so Marissa, let's start with you. Your story is, I understand, has to do with the quest for post-consumer recycled plastic for one of your signature product packaging. So talk a little bit about what happened.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. So we have some pretty iconic packaging for our products. So for those who don't know, we have 36 brands, so all across beauty, and trying to get the right color to represent that perfect, iconic packaging from post-consumer has been a massive challenge. One where we're trying and learning, and we keep upping the PCR content, but we haven't hit that perfect color for two of our iconic packs. So actually we have one good story where we actually went out with a slightly different color, and we're testing it right now, but we think it's going to help stand out and signify the sustainability impacts of that product. So that's quite exciting. I think on the other side, another example of that is taking back our products and then getting them to the point where they're actually food grade tested to be reintegrated. So we've been working for 10 years with one of our brands to take back the bottles for this particular product. And that's great when it comes to consumer behavior change, keeping it out of landfill. But now that we're hitting that next point where we actually want to turn that in at scale back into the bottles for the same products, we're actually finding, first of all, it's hard to identify through the take-back process because we're doing it with others. And it's also challenging to get it to that food grade level. So these are both areas where we're failing forward, we're continuing to make progress, but we're still having massive challenges.
So the packaging one is I think, interesting and relevant to a lot of people here watching this, because the packaging, certainly in cosmetics and in certain other products, is the brand. And I think your story had something to do with trying to find a cap at the right color that post-consumer recycled plastic. And was it a competitor who sort of, showed you that maybe it's okay if it's not exactly the way it used to be?
That's right. And I think it's also it's a test, right? This is just going live. You'll see it hopefully soon. And we'll see how the consumer reacts. In the consumer testing, it went well, but we're going to see. It is taking a chance. And it was, I do think, thank you to all those who are paving the way for some change. And we all watch each other and pull each other in the right directions. But yes, it did take a bit of a push. And always a competitor doing something helps with that.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, Levi's has been on this journey for a long, long time. I need to put out a circular gene, I don't know, 501, your signature iconic brand a decade ago, or it seems. But more recently, you put out a wasteless gene, and I know there was a waterless gene maybe 10 years ago that used a lot less water. This was wasteless. Now I don't know with a wasteless gene where you put your belt if there's no waste, but that's but anyway, that's a detail. So wasteless gene was supposed to be genes made from trash, in effect.
Right.
What happened?
Yeah, exactly. So first starting with this waterless concept, because I think that's what kind of led to the wasteless concept. So in 2009, we instituted this campaign on waterless, where now we can say that we've saved about 13 billion liters of water through finishing processes and recycling processes. So we were trying to figure out, how do you actually convert that into product? Because the waterless scenario is really a manufacturing scenario, but how can you actually produce a product where we could call it something kind of like waterless? So wasteless was a pair, well, it was actually three products. It was a 511, it was a 504 straight, and a trucker jacket that we produced with 20% recycled polyester. And this was in 2013. So those of you that can think back to 2013, that's just right when recycled polyester for fiber, for clothing, became a little bit more economical. And we tested it with consumers, and they loved it. They thought it was a great idea. We created this really amazing video. Look it up. It's Wasteless. And we launched the product, 30,000 pieces. And as a result of launching that product, we immediately realized that creating a cotton product that's mixed with polyester is a bad idea. And so 2013, great idea of changing bottles and food trays into jeans. People understand recycling. But, if you look at this from a systems perspective and holistically, we started to get a lot of questions from folks about, like, okay, are you going to take this back? How are you going to recycle it? And those types of things.
So is that wasteless gene still around, or is that over?
No, that was stopped.
Yeah. So one of the things that's interesting is that the tagline for that was, I think it was made from garbage.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a weird little tagline in terms of trying to get people. I mean, it's on the one hand, we all know what that means, right? And we love that. But to the trucker, the average consumer, how did that go over?
It went over very well. I mean, it's if you look it up on YouTube, I was looking at the video last night. These jeans are made from garbage. It's kind of like the Patagonia "Don't buy this jacket." It's that type of shocking type of advertising that got people interested in taking a look at it.
Yeah. Well, I see you got a pair of jeans there, and either you're going to change in the middle of this, or we'll come back to you with it. But let's go to Jane. Jane, your products are very different because these are durable goods that have a 50-year life, and so whoever you're selling it to is not going to be who's going to be around at the end of its useful life. So I know you tried this with a chair to figure out a way to get it back, and we'll tell the rest of the story.
Yeah, so about, I'd say 10 years ago, we had a couple of customers that asked, do you have a take-back program? And we thought there's starting to be a market for this. So we thought, we're bringing out a new chair, we'll develop it for that, with that in mind. We used very easily recyclable polymers, steel. It was made of maybe 10 components, easy to disassemble. We even molded into the bottom of the chair, like to bring it back to human scale, call this number. So we launched the chair, the weeks go by, the months go by, years went by, and I think since then we've gotten one phone call in the whole time.
Wait, you haven't gotten one chair back?
We haven't got, we helped with that one phone call, but, we really didn't get the barrage of people saying, okay, now even though during the sales process, some people were asking, do you have a take-back program? Can you handle this at the end of life? And so we set up the system to be able to do that. And so then we had to look at what was this big distance between something that's theoretically designed to be circular, with that in mind, communicated about during the sales process, and then what happened in reality was a very different situation. And a couple of things came to mind for us. One was that durable goods really have a different set of considerations because things change so much over time. And that'll be true for all durable goods. For us, what that looked like is that the person who purchased it would maybe no longer be at that, we sell business to business, so that person may not be at that role anymore. That intention and knowledge may not have been, had continuity over time. And then the other thing that came up for us was the really importance of systems thinking and a systems approach, which you've also mentioned. And so we found that what we'd been trying to do without realizing it was we had tried to create one circular product within an existing linear system. And how that works in our example was that you might have, when somebody's building out an office space, the interior designer, specifier, will be there'll be a project manager. They'll make sure to get the window shades from this company and the carpets from this company and the, lighting from this company and the chair from this company. When that same space is going to be renovated, they don't necessarily reach back to this lighting company and this chair company, and they don't have a project manager to do all of that work to manage the materials leaving. So, where we got to in the end so far, and we're still working on it, was we realized that we couldn't just say, like, of all the stuff you're dealing with, we're going to take that one little, our product, our chair out of your whole mix of things you're dealing with. We started to partner more deeply with our clients, and when they're renovating, help to deal with our material, but then also all the material that they're trying to handle.
So, yeah, I would think that companies would want to find something to do with these things, because so many companies, I'm sure a lot here, have warehouses full of furniture that they had and didn't need, either because of growing, shrinking, reorganizing, or just getting tired of it, stuff breaks. And so how would you work differently now with the customer? And the other difference, of course, with Human Scale is that you're B2B as opposed to these two consumer brands. But so what have you learned about the B2B world that would maybe benefit others and certainly has benefited you?
Yeah, I think one thing we're dealing with is volume in a different way. So you might have a lot more individual transactions. We've got transactions that will be 500, 1,000 at a time. So we can make decisions in a slightly different way. We also have partnerships with not-for-profits where we can see, okay, can we flow this material that is maybe no longer needed here into agencies where they might be, not have a lot of funding. It might be very useful for them to be able to spend their funding dollars on the initiatives they want to, instead of on the furniture they need to be sitting on. So I think we can operate maybe on a bit more of that systems level, just because we have some of those larger decisions that are being made.
Yeah, Marissa and Jeff, Marissa first, there's a lot of bringing the consumer along on this journey. Talk a little bit about what you've learned in that regard, Marissa.
Absolutely. So first off, for those in the audience who are newer or their companies are newer to circularity, I will just share one anecdote, which is that when I first went to pitch this to, talking about the circular economy and aspects of it to our marketers, this was in a past life, long time ago, I was told that I sounded like a tree-hugging hippie, which I will say I took as a compliment, because that means generally I don't. And as a sustainability professional, you want to be seen as just another voice in the room with maybe a perspective. So I do think it was a great moment where I learned, first of all, it gave me a window into what they were thinking and concerned about. Second of all, I was with a junior associate at the time who was completely devastated. And I said to her, this is a first no. There are going to be many other no's. But I think that was an interesting one with a marketing team. In terms of working with the consumer on this and behavior change, I think it's one of our greatest challenges. I was mentioning in the first example, bringing things back. We thought that if we can get people to bring things back, okay, that's the first step in the process, obviously, aside from eco-designing into that. But then what we were doing with retailers was actually trying to get all the types, it didn't matter what brand, bring it all back. But now we have to figure out what's our brand, what's not our brand. In terms of the consumer, I also think, and this is not just circularity, we've been working since 2013 on doing product lifecycle analysis and footprinting on all of our products and turning that into a consumer-facing label. It's rolled out in 20 countries in Europe, and we're rolling it out in the US this year, doing a lot of consumer testing on that as well. But we're seeing, as we start doing consumer insights. We know some of our friends are here who have much more information on this, that there's just a sea of information. And it's in some cases a sea of generic information, badges, labels. Everyone has a different standard. So there are a few standards that are really well known and we're excited about and we endorse. But then as all these different groups start coming up with things, it doesn't allow the consumer, I think, to make informed choices. So we're excited about giving the consumers that information and that transparency so that not only can they choose sustainable products and companies that are doing the hard work, but also that they can become part of, obviously, that virtuous circle. If we can activate that consumer base, the world is our oyster, I hope, from a circularity and sustainability perspective. But I do think that sea of sort of generic use of the words eco. We know regulators are cracking down. I have high hopes for how seriously we'll take that, but I think it's yet to be seen how they're going to enforce it.
And the generic consumer data too that says consumers would gladly, 78, 80% would gladly buy the green one, and 27%, I'm just making this up, would pay a premium for the price of doing that. In turn, it's not in real life. No. Jeff, you're nodding. But I want to ask you, Jeff, what's the successor to the wasteless genes? I know it's you've probably not given up there. It's circularity is, after all, in your genes.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Sorry.
Great one.
It's a slow way.
We did that before, remember?
I think there's a time delay, but keep going anyway.
Well, I think, as these concepts like cradle to cradle have come to the table, and the Ellen MacArthur Genes Redesign Project, which was really based on the principles of cradle to cradle, you have pretty much all the apparel companies that are producing denim jeans kind of moving down a path towards circularity in jeans. But I think it's important to note that it's not only about the product. I mean, as you guys all know quite well, it's about the ecosystem around taking back, sorting, cycling technology, those types of things. And so creating these products that are mixed with other materials, especially in fabric, where you can't really logically take it apart mechanically, you have to always do it chemically now. We're striving towards producing products that don't have a lot of synthetic materials in it. And so the what you were referring to.
The big reveal. Is.
So we launched the Circular 501. This is like the first fit. And the thing that's really interesting about this is that it has 40% post-consumer input. So it's basically chemically recycled cotton, which is actually viscose, which is kind of extruded and spun. It removes all of those kind of synthetic materials like the synthetic sewing thread and the paper label. This is a cotton label, that type of thing. And so creating something that, when you do recycle it, you don't have to actually extract all the different types of components and recover them.
And how are you going to market this? What's the value proposition that you think is going to sell it?
Well, I mean, one thing that we've learned, and I saw Chris Coulter here a little bit earlier, is through some of the research that they've done, post-pandemic and coming up to the pandemic, they did a study of like 37,000 consumers, and they basically—
This is GlobeScan you're talking
GlobeScan, yeah. GlobeScan survey. Take a look at it. It's the Healthy and Sustainable Living survey. And one of the things that they've seen is that consumers are basically looking to change their behaviors, and they also believe that it's relatively easy to do. And so now we're reaching this point where, maybe it's a perfect storm of folks looking for these types of products because they know, first of all, this is iconic. This has been around for, more than 100 years. It's an endless style, it's durable, and it has those sustainability attributes to it. So, we produce 50,000 pairs of these, $128, which is a kind of a high price for a pair of jeans. And we've relaunched this color, I think, a couple weeks ago. And the first color, which was more of a stonewashed type of look, we sold all of those products with virtually no markdowns.
Yeah.
So that's shows that it works, but it's a small scale. It's not 300,000 pairs. It's 50,000 pairs, and we're trying it, and we're trying to, learn and be humble about what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah. So we've got very little time left, but I want to ask each of you, starting with you, Jane, what's one piece of advice that maybe we haven't mentioned yet that you really want to share with the audience that would help them get past or get closer to success and maybe learning from some of your stumbles?
I guess the importance of a systems approach, and just like the item on its own is really living within a whole system of, and it's so easy to get tripped up. So to look at everything that's around the product as well as the product itself.
Yeah, Jeff?
I would say just be really humble and clear on what you mean by circularity and how you kind of sell it into consumers, just to manage expectations, because consumers will ask questions. So
Yeah, and having good answers is important. Marissa?
For me, it would be common language. So in addition to perseverance mentioned before, but having standardized, we use the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's definitions for circular, using a common language and making sure you're level setting what you mean by circular, which aspect of circularity you're talking about, because hopefully you are looking at it from a systems perspective when you're in meetings, and it pays dividends. Yeah, that and semicircles. I love their concept of semicircles too, right? There's doing it all, and then there's pieces of the puzzle. So if you have that sort of framework definition, you can be excited by your semicircles and then hopefully get to the full circle.
Yeah, coming next year, semi-circularity. Well, this is we're out of time, and there's so much to talk about. But I think we've established that failure is a delay, not a defeat. It's a detour, not a dead end. So thank you for, as I said, being brave enough to come and talk about stumbles, and we all learn from them, as I know you did. Please join me in thanking Jane, Jeff, and Marissa. Thank you.